welcome to the January 11th, 2022 meeting of the Roseville Independent Redistricting Commission. The meeting is now called to order. Clerk, will you please call roll?
Borowiak.
Here.
Cuthbertson.
Here.
Frank.
Here.
Griffith.
Here.
Ludwig.
Here.
McPhail.
Here.
O'Keefe.
Here.
Sweeney.
Here.
Waldrop.
Here.
Willoughby. He is absent. And Wagner. He is absent as well. And our alternates, Keene.
Here.
Slaughter.
Here.
And Donor is absent.
Thank you. Vice Chair Borowiak, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just as a clarification, there are no minutes from the last meeting for us to approve. So the agenda looks a little bit different in that standpoint.
Correct. And I can clarify that. So we normally approve meeting minutes from the prior meeting, but given the fact that we're doing so many consecutive meetings and under the Brown Act, we have to provide 72 hours notice of the agenda. It would be too difficult for us to prepare meetings, get the agenda published. And so what we're going to do is we're going to approve minutes for all of these public hearings at our January 24th meeting. So these should all generally be the same sort of public testimony and public comment at each one of these. But just so everyone's aware, for the next couple of meetings, we will not be approving minutes because those will all take place on the January 24th meeting.
Thank you. Now we'll open it up to public comment, and just a reminder that this section of public comment is for things that are not on the agenda. We also have the opportunity to have residents call in. The number is 916-774-5200.
Nope.
Is there-
774-5353 for public comment. Sorry.
Okay. I'm looking at the wrong number. Sorry, what was the number again? 774?
916-774-5353.
Thank you.
And as we're waiting for public comment to potentially come in on the phone, we have talked about the AB 361 resolution that allows for this remote telephonic public comment. So I'm just letting everybody know that at our Saturday meeting that we have, which will be back here in the council chambers, I'm going to bring another AB 361 renewal resolution before you so that we can extend having this remote telephonic public comment for the remaining meetings. So just as a heads up, that'll be on our next agenda, or I'm sorry, on our Saturday agenda. What are we at? Yeah, we have a meeting on Thursday too.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda? If you don't mind coming up and stating your name.
Yeah, my name is Stan Bollinger, and I wanted to talk about the Highway 65 freeway going south from Blue Oaks down to I-80. Most of the time it's all stopped. You can't, the traffic is completely backed up. Maybe they could probably, at some point, add some more lanes to free up the congestion on Highway 65 going south and put a new interchange in where I-80 and 65 meet. I know this is not on the agenda, but I just wanted to tell you about it.
Thank you for your comments. That might be something you might also want to discuss with the Roseville City Council, or we also have a transportation commission at the City of Roseville. So this is more specific focus to redistricting and redrawing of council district boundaries. And so we will take your note for the record. Thank you. But
you also have 6 draft plans for the 6 different.
Correct.
You had to talk about these tonight and you have to pick one of them, right?
Not tonight. We're not picking one of them tonight, but we are discussing the 6 of them tonight. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else in the audience who would like to speak on a non-agenda item? Are there any phone calls that have come in?
No.
Nope. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. First item on the agenda is item 5.1. Joe, you're up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Mandel with the Roseville City Attorney's Office, and tonight the Independent Redistricting Commission is holding the second of 6 public hearings to discuss the 6 draft maps that are being considered for final adoption by the Commission. As an FYI for everyone watching and here, I'm going to be doing the same overview at each of the public hearings just to make sure that all of the messaging is consistent. So if you missed this meeting, there's plenty more. Before we jump in and look at the maps, I wanted to do a quick recap of what we're doing tonight and to discuss the redistricting criteria that should be considered when we are creating a final map. And I know that some of this information has been presented before, but I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of dates and deadlines and information. So this slide talks about the purpose of the commission. What are we doing here? What is the purpose of the redistricting commission? So what we're doing here is we're establishing a process that's open and transparent and allows public comment on the drawing of city council district boundaries. We ensure that the district boundaries are drawn according to the redistricting criteria set forth in the city charter and applicable law, and we're ensuring that this redistricting process is conducted with integrity, fairness, and without personal or political considerations. So all of this language is noted in our city charter, and this was approved by the voters and added by Measure R in the general election in November of 2020. So if anyone's interested, this is Article 11 of our Roseville City Charter, available on our homepage. Next slide, please. Again, the city charter sets forth the redistricting criteria that this commission needs to follow. And in Article 11, Section 11.09, this is where we talk about the criteria that the commission shall look at. So the commission shall draw its final map so that council districts are substantially equal in population as required by the Constitution. And the way we figure out that population equality is looking at the latest census data. Item number 2, council district boundaries need to comply with the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution, Federal Voting Rights Act, and other state and local laws. So those are the items that we must follow as part of our redistricting criteria. And now on the next slide, this is where we're talking about the handling the redistricting criteria in the following order of priority. And so again, this is this to the extent practicable language. So item number 1 in order of priority is to the extent practicable. City council districts shall be geographically contiguous. Item number 2, that to the extent practicable, the geographic integrity of any local neighborhood association boundaries, or local community of interest shall be respected in a manner that minimizes its division. And a community of interest is kind of a term of art and is defined here as a population that shares common social or economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation. And it's important to note that communities of interest do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. The next criteria that we're looking at is criteria number 3, is that council district boundaries should be easily identifiable and understandable by residents, so to the extent practicable. Council districts should be bounded by natural and artificial barriers, by streets, or by the boundaries of the city. And then moving on with order of priority of criteria, where it doesn't conflict with the preceding criteria, council districts shall be drawn to encourage geographical compactness in a manner that nearby areas of population are not bypassed in favor of more distant populations. And then the final catch-all is kind of any other commission-adopted criteria that do not conflict with the other requirements or criteria in this section. And as of now, there are no other commission-adopted criteria that this commission has adopted. And then this slide, we've gone through and talked about what shall you look at, what order of priority should you look at them, and these are the shall nots. You shall not adopt council district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against any political party, and you shall not consider a place of residence of any individual, including any incumbent or political candidate, in the creation of a map. So those are the criteria. we are looking at when we are looking at selecting a map. And now I'm going to go over the 6 maps that we moved forward for further consideration, and that's what we're going to be receiving public comment and testimony on today. So I'm going to walk through those maps. We have renamed them all 6 maps as Draft Map A, Draft Map B, etc. And so this is Draft Map A. I'm going to be going over this for each one of them. Draft Map A is formerly Public Map number 1 when they were submitted by the public. So what we normally saw as Public Map number 1 now has been renamed Public Map A. You can see in that little white box in the bottom left corner where it says formerly Public Map number 1. Draft Map A has a total deviation of 9.5%, and 89% of the neighborhoods are preserved on Draft Map A. Draft Map B looks like this. And Draft Map B is formerly Public Map number 6. Draft Map B has a total deviation of 6.3%, and 91% of the neighborhoods were preserved in this map. Draft Map C is formerly Public Map number 8. This one has a total deviation of 4.4%, and 78% of the neighborhoods were preserved. Draft Map D is formerly Public Map number 14. This one has a total deviation of 6.3%, and 93% of the neighborhoods have been preserved in this Map D. Map E is formerly Public Map number 15. This one has a total deviation of 8.3%, and 98% of the neighborhoods have been preserved on Draft Map E. And finally, Draft Map F, which is formerly Public Map number 25. This one has a total deviation of 6.0%, and 98% of the neighborhoods have been preserved. And just so that everyone's aware, on our homepage on the Redistricting tab, you can click through each of the tabs for these draft maps A through F, as well as all of the summary statistics and information that's all available online if you are interested in seeing more information on each one of these maps, as well as there's large downloadable maps that show all the way down to street level detail, so you'll be able to see details. And then for those of us that are in the audience here today, there are maps, and all of the paperwork is outside in the lobby here if you'd like to grab a copy for yourself. Next slide is I'm going to talk about now just the process that we've been going through and the process moving forward that we're doing right now. So this is, again, language from our city charter, Article 11, Section 11.10. We have already done this part of it. So the commission shall file a preliminary redistricting plan and draft map with the city clerk. Again, we filed 6 draft maps, along with a written statement of findings and reasons for adoption, which shall include the criteria employed in the process and a full analysis and explanation of the decisions made by the commission. We filed that on December 22nd of 2021. So that next sentence, the city clerk shall publish the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map at least 30 calendar days prior to the adoption of a final redistricting report and final map. We have our final map adoption meeting scheduled for January 24th, 2022. And again, our draft map and plan were filed with the clerk and circulated on December 22nd, 2021. So that part's taken care of. And now as we move on to the next slide, this is the process that we're moving through right now. During the 30 calendar day period after publication, the commission shall hold at least 5 public hearings, including 1 public hearing in each existing council district. We are holding 6 public hearings as part of this draft map circulation. Again, this is meeting number 2 at the Civic Center, and you can see our next meeting on Thursday is at the Mike Shelito Indoor Pool, and then we have a meeting on Saturday at 2 p.m. here in the council chambers, and next week, Tuesday at the Martha Riley Library, and then Thursday at St. John's Episcopal Church out west of Fittymint. Next slide, please. After we've heard comments from the public at each one of these 6 public hearings on the preliminary redistricting plan and draft map, on January 24th, the commission is going to adopt a final redistricting report and final map. That final report and final map has the force and effect of law and is effective 30 days after it's filed with the city clerk, and it shall remain effective for another 10 years after that. And important to note that city council may not rescind, supersede, or revise the district boundaries that are adopted by this commission. So you're the final call. Next slide. Okay. And then this is more language straight out of our charter, and just as an FYI for after we do the map adoption, after the final map is adopted, the city clerk shall number each council district such that for as many residents as possible, the number of the council district they reside in remains the same, as well as the final redistricting report and final map shall be subject to referendum in the same manner as other ordinances. So the point of all of these public hearings that we're going to be doing is we're here for this next 30 days to, hear input, thoughts, comments, concerns, clarifications, expectations, anything from the public, anything from the commissioners. We're just out here to receive public testimony and public comments and just to solicit feedback on all of these maps. So again, that's the purpose of tonight. We're on meeting number 2 of 6 and moving toward our final map adoption date of January 24th. Up on the screen, you'll see if you have any questions about redistricting at all, please feel free to contact the clerk's office and we would be happy to help anyone. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Chair Frank.
Thank you, Joe. We'll go ahead and open it up to questions or comments regarding this agenda item for commissioners. Are there any commissioners who'd like to speak on this or ask Joe some questions?
Are we going to have Flo here virtually or in some format, like if we want to start talking about changes or?
So Flo's the demographer, and they're the ones with kind of all the bells and whistles.
Right. So Flo is the demographer. Flo is not going to be here at these public hearings. They're not going to be changing lines necessarily at these meetings because we were only able to do that in these when we're actually in council chambers and not able to do that when we're, at Shelito Pool or wherever we're at. And so in order to keep this consistent, we were not going to do any live line drawing. If there are ideas that people have to draw lines, I can tell you I've talked to the demographer about a couple of the lines. But if you would like to put things in the record or just ask us to have those lines drawn, I'm in contact with our demographer. He's just not here at the actual meetings to do live line drawing.
But he will be here at the January 24th, so if we want to make some changes.
Absolutely, and absolutely he will be making those changes in live line drawings and talking through all of them at that meeting.
And I kind of want to ask a little bit more about that in a second.
Sure.
Are there any other questions or comments from any other commissioners?
Just a follow-up to that. So since the Saturday meeting is like an extra one, like we have one in each district, could we make that one slightly different or give more feedback to the demographer at that one or do we just want to keep it consistent through all
I don't know
6?
if that one is technically any different than the other 5. It's just an additional one.
It is. It was intended as just an additional one and not as anything different. I'm happy to, anything that you guys want to put in the record for us to move forward as a further discussion item is perfectly fine. If you recall that the way that the project was, I'm going to call it bid, there was flow, and then there was also, they were partnering with redistricting partners. And so we have a couple of representatives from redistricting partners here today to help us out with any questions that we may have. But as far as the actual drawing on a map, Jed will not be here at this meeting. I can see if he will be available, but I know that's not, like, as part of his proposal, he was not intending on being at any of these meetings.
So in terms of, you mentioned for the record suggestions or changes, do we have to make those during this meeting from up here, or an email is going to be on the record?
Not at all. Yeah, if you want to send an email to the city clerk's office, we will acknowledge it that yes, we received your comment and it will get into the record. But if you want to say, I think the line should be drawn so that, the line's on the opposite side of Main Street, you can just submit that as a comment via email. It doesn't have to come up organically at the
I know, for
meetings
example,
themselves.
Sierra Vista
Yes.
and where it is, which district it is, has come up from a variety of people and commissioners when we would make such a request for a change. And then also I just want to point out that each of these 6 maps has an original numbered map that it's associated with, and you can still go onto the website and kind of play around with it. It's not going to be saved and it's not going to be submitted, but you can see, okay, if I wanted to move this area, what's it going to do to the overall picture?
Correct. And we have had people change those maps, like you were saying, take the maps that were submitted and then change them slightly and submit them over to us in just a screenshot or something like that. Or if you just want to tell us, move this boundary line from here to here, we're in contact with our demographer as well to be able to make those changes. So if this is what the commission wants, is to start talking about some of these changes, I'm happy to do that if we can just make sure we're, we have a consensus on which lines we are considering changing, or at least that we want to hear more about it. We're not going to be making any changes, but I would bring it up to have a further discussion at the next meeting if we wanted to do that.
Now, at the January 24th meeting, where we will be making a final decision and we will be making some changes, I suspect we'll be making some changes.
Yes.
The public will still have an opportunity at that time to make public comment.
Absolutely.
And then how do you envision us coming to a final conclusion? Are we going to narrow it down to a couple of maps? Are we going to say a motion for this map with changes, and then we vote, and then we make the changes?
There's going to be ballots at the final January 24th meeting. There's not going to be a motion. Someone's not going to say, I make a motion that we approve map whatever, and then second the motion. We're going to actually have ballots where, I'll see each one of your names, which map you are voting for, and if there is a leader, a consensus at the end of that, then I will ask for a motion for someone to move forward with that map, and there would be further discussion, a second on that motion, and then ultimately a vote.
So before we actually even do the ballot, we would make some recommendations for any.
Sure, there can be plenty of discussion beforehand, and I would encourage the public to also, be involved in those discussions on that meeting, and then ultimately there will be a point where, yes, we are checking something on a ballot, submitting them over here, and we will figure out, which one is majority-wise or however it is moved forward.
And can you speak a little bit to compactness and how the different maps relative to each other are compact or not? And then also the range of ethnicity with each map. I know the demographers just kind of submitted that.
I was going to say, I know that there was some information submitted by the demographer maybe this afternoon, and I'm not familiar enough with it to want to speak on it here. I know that, Chair Frank, you have a little bit of information on that as well. I'm happy to bring it forward at maybe the Saturday meeting would be easier, since that one would be recorded and televised to talk about that. But we received a decent amount of comment this afternoon that just has not. I don't have enough information to be able to talk through it with everyone here.
Well, we do know that the numbers, the data that Flo gave us originally has some numbers regarding compactness, and according to the demographers, I need to see if I can remember this, the larger the number, the more compact it is?
Yeah, some of the...
Or is it the other way around?
Some of the studies, it's the larger numbers better. Some of the studies, the smaller numbers better.
In terms of the numbers that he gave us.
Correct. And I'm looking for that email that you're referencing.
And again, we can discuss it at the next one as well.
Yes.
And then in terms of the range of ethnicity, it kind of depends on the perspective, but generally a larger number, a larger range is better for different ethnicities having a voice.
That's for the commission to sort of consider.
Again, it's subjective in that
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
Yeah.
And then also there's some information that was available, I don't know if it's available online, but it was in the lobby at the last meeting at this one regarding the 6-year voting gap.
Correct. There is some information, again, there's information available out on the staff table out there, but there is information that what Chair Frank is referencing is in each one of the maps, like I had mentioned, after the final map is adopted, the city clerk will go forward and renumber each one of the districts so that everyone's in as close to the same district as they can. But obviously, people will move out of districts. And so since we're moving forward in district elections, there will be certain districts that would be ineligible to vote. And so there's a page out there on the table And if you give me a second, I can find it myself too.
This one?
It's this page that has some yellow highlights on it. And this generally shows that if a certain map was adopted, then X number of people would not be able to vote in the next election that would normally have voted just because they moved from one district to the other. So depending on which map was adopted, there are a different number of people affected in each district that would apply to. So again, this is the form. I believe it is available online on our website, and if not, it's available out in the lobby and will be available at each of these public hearings and part of the public record itself. And this also makes me want to note that on our city redistricting webpage as well, where all of the draft maps are located, they're all located in various tabs. There's also a tab that's up there for all of the public comments and testimony that we have received, and we're trying to update it so that it's updated on a daily basis and everything up through today. But again, we're receiving comments all the way up through the meeting. So it's probably a day behind, but in case anyone is interested in seeing any comments or testimony received from the public, you can always go on our redistricting website and download that there. And I believe there's 20 or 30 of the comments there now, and just wanted to let everybody know those were available for the public.
And on that note, I kind of wanted to give a shout out for kindness out there. I know that sometimes we can get public comment or written comment that says, I like this map or I like that map, and I think that's what we're trying to see. But if we can at all refrain from calling individuals or groups out, I think that'll make the process a lot easier and I think better for our city in the end as well. Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
I've got one, and maybe I'm just forgetting if we discussed this, but of the maps that we've adopted, were any of those actually drawn by any of the commissioners?
My answer to that would be, I don't know, and I would say it doesn't matter, and it could possibly very well be someone on the commission, someone from the public.
Would you like to know if anyone on the commission drew?
Well, I just thought it would be more transparent if we stated if one of the maps we've drawn is part of the 6 that we're considering.
Actually, 2 of them I drew.
Okay.
So I submitted 3 maps, and then we voted on 2 of them.
Yep.
The originals were maps 1 and map 6, and so now it's map A and map B. And beyond that, I don't know if anyone else has drawn any. And primarily, that's because I'm a political junkie. I like this statistical, nerdy number stuff, so it was fun for me. I also submitted the map in the prior redistricting process as well.
I'm trying to create all of these as though they are all exactly equal, and I don't know anybody's from anybody, so thank you for that.
Can I add one more comment? Just in terms of public input, we don't have to pick any of these maps as they are. As we've been saying, we want to make changes. So if you have time to make adjustments, I would encourage you to send in those screenshots. And I don't know if we can possibly get enough of those. I'd love to have, even in that public testimony section, I know there's 2 links right now, but even a third of modifications based on feedback, because the more time people have to look at the maps in their modifications, it makes me a little concerned for us to start adjusting on the 24th, and that being the first time people will see those adjustments, and that's the day we're picking. And I don't want us to have to go to that 31st. I know none of us want to have to push it more. So the sooner we can get modifications out to the public to look at, I think that's better.
And the 31st date is the absolute latest that we can get a map out, right? And also, just to bring to everyone's attention, if you've looked at the maps, you already know this, but not only are we bound by the language in the charter and where people live and things like that, but also by the census tracts. And some of those census tracts are bizarre. And so you might think, why is this part of the city a part of that district? It's just the way that the census tract was drawn, and we kind of had to put it in one or the other. So just keep that in mind. If you see a map that looks kind of bizarre in any way, it could be a function of the census tract. Any more questions or comments? We'll open it up to public comment for this agenda item 5.1. If you can come up and state your name, please. And Joe, are we limited in time in terms of public comment?
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, thank you. My name is Jay Reed. I'd like to first, I live over in Johnson Ranch, an active neighborhood association. It seemed to be some debate last week. First, I'd like to reiterate Commissioner Sweeney's comments. I think that, like, map changing is fine. It shouldn't be at the last minute when, you know, it's going to be a surprise to the public. So if we want to make changes to specific maps, I think they need to be on the fly as you have these meetings. I think that's really important for public transparency and input. As I said, my name is Jay Reed. I live over in Johnson Ranch. This is actually the first time I've ever commented on a redistricting process in a community that I've lived in. But I have been a part of redistricting and districting for about 10 years now. I have represented business interests to making sure business corridors or town centers weren't split, obviously communities of interest. And one of the things that I've noticed in all of my work is that there's always some kind of tomfoolery or shenanigans going on behind the scenes. And I look at some of the maps before us, and it seems to me that there is some of that, at least, because it doesn't make sense when you have, let me just refer back to one of your criteria, and it's to make sure that, like, your maps are easily identifiable and understandable to the general public. Well, if you look at maps D, E, and F, those maps are, they have like these fingers of one district and another district kind of wrapping completely around it. That is neither identifiable or understandable to a member of the public. If you're walking in a straight line and you're in District 3, and all of a sudden you're in District 2 for 10 minutes, and then you're back in District 3, I'm sorry, but that is not easily identifiable or understandable. But don't take my word for it. Just your own demographer referred to maps D, E, and F as unique in their configuration. And having done this for a while, that's demographer speak for gerrymandering. So I just want to bring that to your attention, that those maps are uniquely configured, and I don't know what the reason is. I'm not about to speculate. I think specifically District 3 and Map E hops over Pleasant Grove, and it hops over the Harding area. Map D splits Quail Glen and places the congestion-impacted communities along the Roseville Parkway into 3 districts. District 3 and Map F helps over Pleasant Grove to put Quail Glen into District 3 neighborhoods that have 2 different specific plans. There was a lot of talk last week about neighborhood associations. Well, there should be a lot more talk about specific plans. Those are planning areas that have been specifically identified by the city, and they should remain intact. They're specific, and they're planning tools. The deviation for Map A is way too high. In my opinion, I think that Map C and Map D are your preferred maps. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience for public comment? Can you state your name, please?
Hello, my name is Jonathan Martin. I've lived in Roseville for about 18 years now. Currently, I am a Roseville City Planning Commissioner, Vice Chair, and I'm just here to speak as a citizen of Roseville. I agree with all of his comments he mentioned before about maps D, E, and F. I'm here to put my backing behind map B. I believe that map B, as stated, has some of the lower deviations. It preserves most of the neighborhoods and community centers. The map B will be able to allow for future plannings, because as we all know, Roseville is growing, and it's going to be growing in West Roseville, which is more or less maps. On the maps C, it's maps, or it's zones 4 and 5, and on maps B and the other maps, it's zone 5. And so we're going to have a huge influx of people as we're approving the maps in our planning commission meetings of people coming into West Roseville. So right now we have 5 city council members, and you can possibly, 5 city council members is the lowest number you can have in a city. And with our city growing 10 years from now with the next census, The map B allows for the zone 5 to possibly split up into 3 zones because you're going to have an influx of 20, 30,000 people in there in the next 10 years. So you can take those people and reallocate that zone 5 more efficiently rather than having fingerlings coming out as in D, E, and F maps. So that's my opinion and idea, is that map B allows for the best growth right now with the least amount of voter suppression and the best growth for in the future for the next census and coming up. So my opinion is I'm backing map B for this project. Thank you.
Any other members from the public? State your name for the record, please.
Oh, get this thing off here. Yeah, Richard Ricucci, lifelong resident of Roseville, and the memo that I'm not going to read it to you, but I submitted today, and your attorney actually and the chairman, Frank, referred to it, and it was it's basically the map of the deviation of the 6-year that was presented at your last meeting. I know that every 10 years lines are going to be shifting around, but I think that shifting around should be minimized as much as possible so the least number of people are impacted. Now that has to be all, of course, weighed against all your priorities that you're already going through to develop your 6 maps. The next item is not a map thing, it's just a comment I want to make from kind of follow up your meeting last week. And the idea is that some people that were presenting said, well, I'm voting for my representative. Well, the only thing a district does is distribute council members around the community in the most equitable manner possible according to the criteria. Each council member will not have any more power or less power than in the other 4. In fact, we have a city council manager form of government in our charter. That's what it says. We don't have a district manager form of government. I just want to make that clear that while you're thinking about this, I know your attorney already said, you shouldn't consider where people live and this stuff like that. But I just want to make that clear that people that might be thinking, well, I'm getting somebody that I can vote for. The other 4 council members have been traveling throughout the city, even at this time since the last district election, and visit and attend meetings throughout the city. I just wanted to clarify that if there was any misunderstanding, that council member that's selected by district will not have any appointment priorities or anything else. The council's still going to act as a 5-member council to approve budgets, capital improvements, all the city services that we love here in the city of Roseville, our utilities and public health and what have you. So I just want to make that quick comment. Thank you very much. And again, thank you for your hard work. It's not easy, I know.
Thank you. We do have a phone call on line D.
Line D, yes.
Line D.
Hey, Katrina.
You have reached the Redistricting Committee. Please.
We're good.
Thank you for calling into the Redistricting Committee. Please state your name and make your comment now.
Hi, Lisa Larkin. I wasn't going to call in tonight because I have participated in the other meetings, but you had announced that you didn't want people calling out other map issues. Though we did have just a few moments ago somebody kind of insinuate that a few of the maps were gerrymandered. And if those people have not been in the mapping program, the Tableau program used to map these districts, they wouldn't know that maps E and F are not gerrymandered. They clearly are looking at prior to, after contiguous, which is neighborhood associations. And the reason that, for example, in District 3 it jumps over Pleasant Grove is because Island Reserve jumps over Pleasant Grove. And so that is keeping that neighborhood association together. the Quail Glen is keeping that neighborhood association together. If you look at the mapping program and you look at the neighborhood associations, you will see that this fits that. And as I said, 98%. Also, I wanted to comment on map F, not only keeping all the districts together, but it has the second to the lowest deviation at 6%. And it also has the second to the lowest population, leaving more growth for District 5 on the west side of Roseville. So I just wanted to make those additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other callers? Anyone else in the audience? I know I fudged this up last time, so I'll close public comment. And also, just a reminder, so even though we're in city council chambers, this is actually the public meeting for District 2, correct? And when we were at Maidu last week, that was for District 1 under the current districts. And then when we're at Mike Shelito, that will be District 3.
Correct.
And then we'll go to
Riley Library, which would be
District
District
4.
4, and then St. John's Episcopal Church, which is District 5.
And again, the reason I bring that up, you can go to any of these meetings that you want, but it'd be great to see people who are in those districts have their eyes on the nuances of the roads and everything and where the creeks come through their neighborhood, to be at those meetings so they can make comments as well. Or if they choose to call or send an email.
Before we move on, we have one more phone call that just called in.
Okay.
Thank you for calling the Redistricting Committee. Please state your name and you may make your comments now.
Thank you. I apologize for not dialing quite fast enough, but my name is Kathleen Crawford, and I appreciate you taking my call a few minutes after the last speaker. I'm a resident of Sun City, Roseville, and I have been following this issue closely, both at the county level as well as at the city level. And I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into these maps and the amount of public input that is being solicited here in the city of Roseville. I also particularly like map E and F because it does not break up communities of interest and associations. Map D would be my third choice. It's really important to me and to many people that groups like Sun City remain whole and remain nearby other districts. Roseville is blessed by such interesting communities, and there are other retirement communities on the other side of Cinnamon, as well as on the other side of Blue Oak. So I really do appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And again, my priorities would be maps E and F, and then as a third choice, map D. Thank you.
Thank you. That's 0 now on phone calls? I'm not. One more phone call. Thank you.
Thank you for calling the Redistricting Commission. Please state your name and you may make your comments now.
Thank you. My name is Einer Mensch, and I submitted potential amendments to 2 of the maps, so map B and map C. And I agree with the commissioner who said we really need to consider whether or not, before you end, you've got to take up the issue of, are you going to amend the maps as you go or not, or when? And I would hope that you would address it tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's the last phone call. Last chance for folks in the audience. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. This agenda item was for information only, so there's no action required. We'll move on to item number 5.2, draft map and community of interest public testimony. This is for Joe Mandel.
Good evening again, everyone. This item 5.2, is really just an opportunity to solicit more information from the public and receive more public testimony on any of the draft maps or any comments that anyone would have on any of the maps, as well as to note that we are still interested in receiving community of interest public testimony, and there is a form that I'm going to hold up that looks like this that's available out in the lobby, as well as it's available online and on our redistricting webpage. And I'm going to go over some of the questions that it's asking you if you have an interest in filling this out and submitting it. But it's kind of just an overview of the redistricting process, and then there's a question of which draft map do you think best serves the interests of the city of Roseville, and then you get to give your choice and explain why or why not you like that map. And then there's another portion of this form that talks about what is a community of interest and gives a couple of examples. And then there's some questions in here and this is for testimony tonight that I would like people to consider for providing us to the commission of what are the common interests in your community and in your community of interest. What are the common interests? Please describe how they're important. In explaining the geographical location of your community of interest or what its physical boundaries are, and if there's a reason why your community of interest should be considered in the redistricting process, please describe how this redistricting process could have an impact on your community. So this is, again, just a form to provide the commission with any information. If you're unable to provide testimony here, you can provide it anytime and submit it to the city clerk's office or submit it via email. 24 hours a day, we're available. Just want to make sure we get all that community of interest testimony from the public. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Have we been receiving any more of those forms? 'Cause I know we kind of had a influx of them early on.
We have, I don't receive all of them, and I know the clerk's office does. I would say we receive more email comments from people with comments or recommendations about a certain map rather than filling out this actual form itself. The form was sort of created for at these meetings, but then we wanted to make it available online for people to be able to fill out. And it's an online fillable out form, and there's information on the back about where you can submit it. So if anyone is interested, please, I would encourage submitting those communities of interest testimony.
And have any of the commissioners received any communications from communities of interest that you'd like to share with the commission now? Maybe hasn't already been?
No.
Okay. They told me to ask that. My script, my whole script here. So next up we have.
Wait, can we ask for public comment on that?
Well, on that item, or?
Yeah, so we're not moving on. I didn't know if you were moving on to item 5.3.
No.
Okay.
I was I wanted to ask, but if commissioners have any other questions for you.
I do.
Yep.
In hearing all the public comment, I feel like we're pretty good with some of the districts in general, nothing too specific. What I am curious about to hear, and I haven't heard for or against or what the thoughts are on District 5. I hear there's lots of controversy about District 4 and District 5, but 5 is, the plans for District 5 is incredible growth. That I've heard one number of 20,000 new homes in District 5, which if you figure 2 people per home, 40,000 people, that's a lot compared to the other districts. And this applies for the next 10 years. So I'm curious as to what the public's, the residents' thoughts are on that as far as council representation, because I don't know what is the most fair in your eyes, but I would like to hear about that.
In terms of whether that western side has 2.
Should it be 2 council members? Should it be 1 council member?
And that's
3,
kind of a
whatever.
discussion even for some of the other, whether it's a neighborhood association, whether it's divided by a district. Also,
For whatever reason, I just want to hear. I don't want to speak for the residents.
Okay.
I want to hear, because I think a lot of those residents are coming from the Bay Area, so they're going to have a community interest of recent moves from the Bay Area.
You're giving kind of a prompt for any public comment.
Yes.
Also, keep in mind that for the current District 5, a lot of it is agricultural now, but might not be agricultural in 10 years.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that a little bit, because map D addresses that a little, where the whole western side is under a growth pattern right now. And if you do start now, I know there was a comment, I think it was Mr. Rakuchi's comment here, maybe it was a different one, there was a lot of them today that I read, talked about gradually changing so that there's not, even 10 years from now, a lot of people thrown out of the voting cycle, just like right now map B looks best for that aspect of it. But we're going to be dealing with this again 10 years from now. And if you put District 5, all of the growth in District 5 next 10 years, you're going to be looking at, oh, now there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to miss an election cycle because we're going to have to split 5 in 2, basically. So if you start off with looking at something that's more like map D, that may address part of that and alleviate that a little bit and give you a place to move a little bit instead of just chopping a whole new section out.
The other thing I would add is, in response to Mr. Rakuchi, that I do agree that the city council members all represent the city of Roseville, the entire city, and I love that. But since we were changing to districts, when we decide the lines, it's going to change how people can vote for their council members. A person from that is not, maybe they live in districts 1, 3, or 5, they're already elected. This next election is for districts 2 and 4, I believe. So when we draw these lines, people are going to be limited to their districts and who they can vote for, who can run, and how many people will be able to vote for them. And that will change the structure of the city council. So it shouldn't be overlooked that even though they represent the whole city, it's going to change the face of the elections. And I think that needs to be considered as well.
Are there any other comments or questions from commissioners?
So we've heard a few comments at different meetings about the specific plans being another proxy for communities of interest that they want us to look at. And those are on the website when you're able to build a map, but we don't have any of these nice printouts that might make it more accessible for people to reference which specific plan they identify as a community of interest. So that might be something nice to include at some of these so people can get more specific, because I keep hearing a lot about the specific plans, and so I was looking at the different maps, and even map B does split some specific plans, and so I'd love to understand why some specific plans better represent a community of interest and cannot be separated, and while others can, and kind of give a tool to the public to get specific.
Can we get a paper map?
Can I ask for a clarification on what exactly are you interested in seeing a map of what the specific plan areas are in the city, or?
So, if we could have something, so I think this is a really powerful tool for all of us to have as we're talking. People are saying, oh, you're breaking up this neighborhood association. Everyone in the audience can also get this. And while we can go onto the website and find the specific plans, we can go and see them on the maps one plan at a time. I think a nice visual could help people get more specific. If feedback for the commission is we should be paying more attention to the specific plans, then I think we should give some more tools to do that.
Can you request that Jed make that available to us?
What does that map have that you were holding up? Does that not have the specific plans itself on it?
These are the neighborhood associations.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor Frank, if I can just make one quick comment. If you go to the IT section of the website, it has all the different maps, and there's one map that has the specific plans. and has the old town and the other ones. It's already there. Just I agree with you. If you just have a printout like you have the other ones, just print it out.
It looks like we have one up on the screen now.
Yeah, if you look on the screen, this is from our City of Roseville Development Services Planning website has this map, which is all of the various specific plans. And you can see that big area in downtown Riverside Gateway infill, and compare that to your neighborhood association map. And that's where you're going to see all the various, Los Cerritos, Folsom Road, Roseville Heights, Cherry Glen, Hillgrass, those ones that are not listed in there, but all of the other ones are actual specific plans that went through the entire development process and planning process as a specific plan. So that's why those ones are named the way that they are, and the ones in the older areas of town near downtown do not have a specific plan to them. So this is the information right here that you're sort of asking for, and I don't know, I'm happy to get more of this information to you, but that's generally the visual representation that you're going to be given of that's the specific plans in the city of Roseville right
And
there.
keep in mind, even if the downtown area doesn't have a specific plan, it is a redevelopment area.
Correct.
And it's the only one we have, I think.
There is a downtown Roseville specific plan, which you can see in there in that little downtown area. You can see the area that it covers. It covers the area that we are in right now. But then as you go out further into the neighborhoods, those are just neighborhood associations and not specific plans themselves.
So we can get a paper map like this for the next.
Sure. I can create something
No
like this.
objection?
Yeah. No problem.
All right. Any more comments from commissioners? Seeing none, we'll open it up to the public for comment on agenda item 5.2, communities of interest. Are there any phone calls?
Can I ask a question rather than a comment?
Sure. Come on up and.
It's probably for Joe. When you put up the criteria for this commission, and you went through 3 or 4 different things, is planned growth one of the criteria that this commission needs to consider?
No.
Thank you.
Correct. And so really, again, what we're looking at is census data, and we just are aware that District 5 is going to be growing, over the next 10 years because that's where most of the growth is. So I think there was some discussion of leaving a little bit of room available in District 5 to be able to account for that growth, but absolutely does not need to be taken into consideration.
But population does.
Yes. Population does. But we have our population numbers of roughly 30,000 per district, but whatever we draw that district as today, I think it's safe to say that 10 years from now, whatever District 5 is going to be well over 30,000 people at the next census.
And District 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4 will not have any growth.
And they'll have to.
Or no added population. Whereas 5 will have an added population over the next 10 years.
Isn't that a decision that you make in 10 years rather than today?
I think that's kind of the balls in the air on that question. There's some who.
That's what I wanted to hear is what is.
We're not bound to consider it.
I think, sorry, I don't want to scream from the seats, pardon me. I think that you deal with the present. I know you have to be aware of what's happening in the future, certainly. But that's, when the growth occurs over the next 10 years and you go through another redistricting process, that's when the lines will adjust again. Okay. But for right now, I think you deal with the present, here and now. So that's my thought.
I agree with that, and just do want to point out that, again, the population equality is based on the population as determined in the last census. So that is all we're looking at is that census data that we just received a couple months ago.
And given the deviation of 10%, there's just some wiggle room in there for those things. All right, any other comment from the public? We do have a telephone call. We have 3 telephone calls. Wow. Busy Tuesday night.
Woo.
Thank you for calling the Redistricting Commission. Please state your name and you may make your comments now.
Thank you, Lisa Lurkin. I just wanted to follow up. Again, I just heard the question about population growth not mattering. And I also want to say or ask the question that the specific plans are also not a part of that voter right requirements, correct?
Is that a question for Joe?
Specific plans are not specifically referenced, no.
Correct. Okay. And I just wanted to comment that when you threw up the map on the screen about the specific plans, if you do take map D, that keeps almost every specific plan intact, as well as the majority of the neighborhood associations. Thank you.
Which map did you say does that?
D.
D as in dog.
D as in dog.
And to just comment on Lisa's comment, again, going back to the redistricting criteria, we're looking at this language. To the extent practicable, the geographic integrity of any local neighborhood association boundaries, or local community of interest shall be respected in a manner that minimizes its division. So if the commission wants to consider that a specific plan is a community of interest that they would like to, keep together, minimize its division, I mean, that's certainly something for them to consider, but the name specific plan is not called out. We're just calling out local neighborhoods, local neighborhood association boundaries, and local communities of interest. So I
To vote as a group to decide if we wanted to recognize that, or could we just individually in making our
you
decisions?
don't have to vote as a group. It's just I wanted for your own reference if you want to factor in the importance of the specific plan itself.
As an individual, we can do that. All right, call number 2.
Thank you for calling the Redistricting Commission. Please state your name, and you may make your comments now.
Hi, my name is Larry Hufty. I'm a Roseville resident of about 24 years. I wanted to mention that my preferences on the proposed maps are number 1, map F, number 2, map E, and number 3, map D. And the reason for that is because they keep neighborhood associations intact. What I've seen, I've heard a lot of comments tonight about worried about the future growth being disrupted and redrawn, but that is expected. I know that when I first moved into this neighborhood, everything got redrawn over and over again, and the one thing that did not change is my neighborhood association. And so I think we should protect those neighborhood associations. And now that my area is 25 years old, I'm expecting stability. So instead of focusing on, future-proofing the new growth area, I think we should be focusing on locking down the older neighborhoods so that they don't get disruption going forward. Thank you. Bye.
Did he say, I heard F and then I didn't hear the second, and then D.
F, B.
F, E, and D.
Yes, I thought it was F, E, and D.
Huh. Oh, probably E, not B.
Call number 3.
Thank you for calling the Redistricting Commission. Please state your name, and you may make your comments now.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen Crawford. I called in earlier as a resident of Sun City, Roseville. And I wanted to comment on the fact that all of the emphasis of growth is on District 5 out in West Roseville. And that is probably basically true, but it is not completely true. If you live off of Wood Creek and Blue Oaks, you are seeing a great deal of infill development. There's several large apartment complexes going in, and there will be infill development across the city to, have some impact. I think that if we wanted to look at future voter enrichment, we would make some accommodations for District 5 to allow for potential growth, because it's not going to take 10 years for those 20,000 people to move in. There'll probably be 1,000 in this year and so forth. So the reality is that area is going to grow, and since there is a deviation allowed in the law, it would make sense to leave a little bit of wiggle room out there in the District 5 West Roseville area. So that would be my comment, and thank you again for all of the hard work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other phone calls? Any other public comment from the audience? We'll go ahead and close public comment on 5.2. Again, this is for information only. No action is required. We'll move on to item 5.3. And just a reminder, as we go through 5.3, I don't think there's going to be very much conversation on that. I will open it up again to any final thoughts from commissioners before we adjourn.
Okay, thank you. Item 5.3 is really just to notify everybody of our upcoming meeting schedule. And if Brian or Stephanie in the back, if you can pull up that slide from my earlier presentation that has the 6 other meeting dates on it. Again, we're in meeting number 2 out of 6. And the next meeting that we will be doing, one moment. There we go. Next meeting is on Thursday at the Mike Shelito Indoor Pool on Pleasant Grove and Fairway. So that's at 6 p.m. On Saturday, we're doing in the council chambers here at 2 p.m. And then next Tuesday at the Martha Riley Library. And next Thursday, January 20th at St. John's Episcopal Church. And then again, we're back here in the council chambers on Monday, January 24th for final map adoption. After some of our discussion today and some of the comments about potential live line drawing, let me talk to the demographer, Jed. I know we meet again on Thursday, and so I will be able to provide some comments at that meeting, but then I will also recap more of that at our Saturday meeting, because I want to make sure that these meetings that are televised and recorded, contain sort of all of the information that we've been talking about at each one of these meetings as we do our road show. And so at these next meetings, I would encourage the public to attend and provide more comment and testimony. They will be generally the same sorts of meetings, but everyone's encouraged to attend and come and comment. I'll see if I can have some sort of draft maps for us to talk about, or where lines can move to, so that we are moving towards something in anticipation of a January 24th final adoption date, so that we're not making all of those moves at once. I just want to respect the overall process of, if people have not been to the 5th public hearing yet and we're changing things on the 2nd one and they haven't had an opportunity to comment, I want to make sure that we received everyone's comments. And that was kind of my idea for receiving everyone's comments and then moving forward with the line drawing. But if everyone is more interested in seeing and visualizing some lines being drawn, I'm happy to accommodate that.
And will the next meeting, are we going to have them all recorded, the audio? Because the audio recording was great from the last one.
Yeah, we didn't know how good the audio would turn out. I think the next one should turn out just fine as well, so that we could post the audio. The meeting then next Saturday this coming Saturday will be in this council chamber, so it'll be recorded and available online. But then Tuesday and Thursday of next week, we will do audio recordings as well, assuming they turn out. We didn't know how they would turn out, but since they were not too bad, we put them up there.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think also with the last meeting, it was nice after the meeting adjourned, people still kind of hung around and talked, and some people who might not feel comfortable stepping forward to speak publicly might feel more comfortable just talking one-on-one or one-on-two with either other members of the community or commissioners.
And I would encourage anybody from the public that would like to do that. You can always contact any one of the commissioners up here, or the clerk's office, or me. All of our contact information is available on all these staff reports, so please feel free to send in your information any way you want, and we will make sure to distribute it to the rest of the commission.
Any other commissioners have any questions regarding item 5.3? Jefferson?
I just want to let you know, because this schedule is so packed, I went to the Mike Shelito Pool tonight just to make sure that I could shepherd anybody who happened to be there over here tonight. So I'll see you there Thursday.
Out with the water.
Shopping.
I will now open it up to members of the public who'd like to speak on item 5.3, the upcoming meetings. Not seeing anybody in the audience, anyone on the phone? Go ahead and close public comment. As I said before we adjourn, if there are any questions or comments, and specifically kind of we talked about the idea of little tweaks or big tweaks that we can do here and there. If you have some thoughts, if you would rather email them or wait till another time, that's okay too.
And to follow up on that, again, thinking with a thought in your mind of, as a commission and the public providing comments, is there any other input you want to provide that has not been provided yet? Any thoughts that have not, been discussed? Any wants, any expectations, any of that sort of stuff? Then please, I would encourage anyone to, either provide that information to the commission or in written testimony submitted to us.
Any tweaks that you see on any of the maps? And by speaking on any particular map, I hope the rest of us understand, you're not necessarily favoring that map or not, but if you have any ideas.
Since you bring it up, map B, with a slight change along, let's see, it's foothills, McAnally area. There's a kind of a jagged thing there. And if you make a few corrections there, it actually improves the deviation rate and keeps neighborhoods together. Because some of these things that are called, neighborhoods are really kind of zigzaggy and are picking up houses on one side of the street and not the other, but they're in a neighborhood. So there is, this is between District 2 and District 4. There's those little jaggedy lines there. So it would move a couple of hundred units from District 2 to District 4 and actually improve the overall numbers.
Can you get that
to
map?
4.1.
Get that map up by any chance? Since I drew map B, and I'm very open to it not being chosen or to it being changed, but in my own notes, I called out that one section you were looking at, and there's one little section right north of McAnally that gets kind of screwed, and it's a function of the census tract.
So if you just, pull that one in from District 2 to District 4, two little areas there. One of them is the Snapdragon Court.
You're talking about north part of Foothills Junction, south?
B or D?
B.
The line right between 4 and 2.
You're talking about map B though, right?
We're talking, map B in
Map
the
B.
Neighborhood Association Foothills Junction, that's green on the screen. If you look at the very top of that, there's a purple pinkish area going into District 4.
And people do live there.
And if you move it all to District 4, it makes more sense than leaving little bits and pieces of it in District 2, because it's like apartments and then a couple of houses and then Silverado Oaks, but not all of it. It just is cleaner.
And then just one thing to consider in that, the purple part that is part of Foothill Junctions on this map, that's all open space except for that one little thumb that goes down. And so there is a natural barrier between Foothills Junction and Pleasant Grove where people don't live, except for that one
Right.
spot that goes down there.
But if you drill in a little bit closer, you're picking up houses on the backside of that development. Heritage Oaks, I think it's called, the gated community, and it's not putting them with the rest of their community.
Okay, so that's an area that we can
Yeah.
tweak and
And
look
then
at.
just to the left of that, there's a little community, a small gated community. One of the streets is Snapdragon right there. And if you move that into District 4 also, it improves the numbers, the overall numbers. And it makes a nice clean line along McAnally. Very clean and, anyway, that would be how I would improve that map for starters.
Just to confirm, so you're advocating going within Foothills Junction, kind of splitting the top part of Foothills Junction north of McAnally to go into District 4, and then south of McAnally into District 2?
Yeah, I'm just saying, splitting it very clean at McAnally instead of having it kind of jagged there.
Yeah, it's interesting because McAnally, like the apartments right off of McAnally might be similar to the apartments right across the street. Yeah, it's definitely one to talk about, or maybe we can even ask Foothills Junction what they think.
And again, we're not making any decisions right now, we're just making comments on what we think
Right, and so
potentially could.
I guess a question that I have for the commission is, like with Commissioner McPhail's comment of, is this something that you would like to see in a visual representation of what does this look like if we were to draw the line from what map B shows to what this suggestion is? I mean, is that the level of detail that you would like brought forward to you before the January 24th meeting? I mean, that's something that I would just like to understand so that I can prepare things for your review as well, or if you just want to make comments for the record and then we keep commenting.
Personally, I think I'd just like to make the comments for the record because, like you said earlier, people who were in the meeting, the last meeting, don't have the benefit of making changes but so that we can just have an understanding that there are some little fine-tuning things that could really improve things, I think. And then, there's another similar one that is affected on some of these other maps. That's a Blue Oaks thing.
And I'd like to just add on to that of there may be people at the final meeting that have never watched any of this that are showing up to the final meeting for the first time because it's in their district. And there may be, 10 changes that occur in between at all of these little individual meetings. And that was sort of my idea for not making changes. I'm happy to sort of have them available for further discussion, and that's why we can take these comments and I can have Jed draft up something that, but if we have multiple of these, then just send them in to me and we can start creating them for discussion with the commission.
Since we're on map B right now, are there any other ideas for changes to map B?
Historic.
Historic Sierra Vista.
Historic Sierra Vista, if you can put the map back up, there's kind of that wedge that's currently in District 3, but a lot of comments from the public, and I think from commissioners too, that Sierra Vista should be part of District 2. Again, in looking at that in detail and driving through that neighborhood last week, a function of the census tract is that Alta Vista Avenue, one half of it, if you do that, if you put Sierra Vista into District 2, which I also agree should happen, one thing to consider is that the north part of Alta Vista Avenue, which looks just like the south side of Alta Vista Avenue, is in a different district because it's in a different census tract. And then north of Alta Vista, in what is considered Diamond Oaks, those houses do look different from Sierra Vista houses. They were developed differently. But then when you look at that one part that's just over the STA part of Vista, where the cemetery and the high school, and then just north of that, there are some houses. Those houses match more with Diamond Oaks than they would with Sierra Vista, in my view anyway. And so another question is, do we take that census tract that has the high school and the cemetery and those houses to the north, because technically it's part of the Sierra Vista Historic Sierra Vista Neighborhood Association, or do we not? And so it's kind of two questions when we decide to move that one into District 2. How much of Sierra Vista do we move into District 2?
Plus, there's the whole problem of the deviation too, because as I recall, when we talked about just doing the big chunk of Sierra Vista, that put the deviation too high on that.
I think the demographer said that if you do move all of Sierra Vista on map B into District 2, it doesn't harm the deviation.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you made other changes, then it might, but just that one change doesn't.
That is correct, and there actually is some comments in the record for you to be able to see about that comment as well, of considering changing map B to move Sierra Vista from District 3 to District 2, and that is correct. That would not push the deviation out of 10%.
And Sierra Vista right now in the current maps is in District 1, or where is it right now?
Oh, gosh.
It's in 3?
It's in 1.
Okay. On map B, another item that is really tiny to the north of Junction West, you see part of District 4 that, there's a tiny little thing, it's at Escaton Village on, I'm not quite sure what street that is. There's an Escaton Village on Pleasant Grove, just west of Mahaney Park and by the library and everything. And in my view, should be part of District 4, even though it's part of the Junction West Neighborhood Association, because there's a big open space between that Escaton and the rest of Junction West. And it's just across the street of Pleasant Grove from District 4. So that one tiny little bit of Escaton Village, I would recommend be part of District 4.
So I'm also Joe with Redistricting Partners, so two Joes here. But I'm not drawing this map, so I can't speak to the specifics of everything, but one thing to consider is that, small changes can be made kind of at the end during live line drawing, and that's kind of relatively easy to do. One thing to start thinking about now, though, is big changes. So like when you take a neighborhood association that has 20,000 people, 30,000 people, that's obviously going to have a ripple effect on other districts, right? So if I add 30,000 people to a district, I'm then going to have to take out 30,000 people from another district, right? And doing that is going to move the lines around a lot. It could either be a one-on-one trade between a district, or it could impact all 5 districts. We don't really know, right? So one thing, to consider, maybe do some homework on is the population sizes in each kind of neighborhoods, and if there's, major differences or major changes that you want to make, because if there are major changes that the commission comes to a decision on, those small changes that you're making now and deliberating on might be irrelevant. We don't know, right? And so maybe if there is a big changes, that's, I think, when you can maybe ask Flo if they have the capacity to take a look at just a little map drawing kind of pointer.
The specific changes that we're talking about within neighborhood associations are really good nuances to dig into as those small details. I will remind us all again about the Caseburg-Kingswood Neighborhood Association. No, people are like, oh, neighborhood associations aren't the end-all be-all. But just from a community of interest standpoint, where it's dividing between 2 and 3 is right at our central park, where we host events as a community, where I walk every day. It's a pretty big split and a pretty small-knit community right there. And so that is a distinct difference than maybe an area separated by a bunch of green space. So a big, when we're talking about the Eschaton Village, so I think the more we can get comments from the public or from other commissioners about those nuances of, okay, we are going to have to make compromises on specific plans, neighborhood associations, communities of interest, and some are big compromises and some aren't. So I just want to draw that as a big deal for that area, and I don't know if other people go to that area a lot, but that's a big deal for our neighborhoods.
And as the person who drew map B and may never be able to look at Julia in the eye again, if we divide Caseburg-Kingswood, there is a natural open space area that's more north of that neighborhood association that might be a more natural if we did go to map B.
Yeah. I know that area you're talking about. So, I would also love to see if we are, asking for some, just looking at the changes here. When I look at some of the maps, I kind of was starting from the outside and going in, because there's a lot of consistency. I think Flo did a really good presentation at the beginning of what's common amongst all of the maps. Where are the decision point areas? And I would love to just, again, get more feedback from the community on District 4. Should District 4 go north up to Blue Oaks, or should District 4 go south down towards Wood Creek Oaks? We got some public testimony via email about the Vineyard community, identifying more with Pleasant Grove and Quail Glen. So is that more of a pull, than the Blue Oaks community wanting to be with Sun City and Quail Glen? So I think when we look at District 5, there's only really 3 spots it can go if we keep it on the west. Blue Oaks, Sun City, Junction West. And Sun City seems to make it very clear that they do not want to go into District 5. So then I see a big decision between Blue Oaks or that southern part. So I just kind of want to see if other people can identify some of those big points, and maybe we can get more input from people on those bigger issues.
I would say, since I am a resident of Foothills Junction, that I would say that based on traffic flow, the current traffic flow, that Junction West, Wood Creek Oaks, and Foothills Junction has more in common because they have Baseline Road, and the traffic is getting pretty bad. Blue Oaks is a newer development and has addressed a lot of the traffic flow, but Baseline is still yet to be developed to the full capacity. So I would say if you took Blue Oaks out of District 4 and included Junction West, Wood Creek Oaks, and Foothills Junction, like you said, going south, that would make more sense to me. But again, going back to redistricting partners, now we're starting to make big changes. So I understand that as well.
Are there any other maps that already reflect that? Like that has, instead of
I don't think so.
4 in the north, it's more in the south?
I don't think so.
Map A has, Quail Glen is split, so it doesn't do it completely, because I know Pleasant Grove residents were saying they want to be with Quail Glen. So it would be interesting to look at the exact numbers in that missing part of Quail Glen. But I think that's a cleaner map in terms of, it's very, I find that more identifiable, the different areas.
And you drew that one as well. Yeah.
Who? Oh.
I stay up late. On map A, are there any other changes? Are you recommending we don't try and tweak the little things at this point?
You can definitely start thinking about tweaking the little things. It's just more, as Commissioner Waldrop was saying, if there are big changes that may have kind of ripple effects on the rest of the map, it's good to start kind of thinking about that now and to visualize it, just so you kind of have all the information, rather than on the 24th, live line drawing, and then you suddenly say, hey, I want to move this area with 30,000 people in it, and then you're up until 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out just how to rebalance everything and work with the communities of interest and, accommodate your other criteria. So, again, definitely you can definitely think about the small things, but also, especially at this point in the process, you want to see all your options kind of available. Small things are kind of easy to fix at the end when you're just moving 10 to 100, a few hundred people around. Moving thousands of people around in a city of this size has ripple effects throughout the map.
I do feel that at the December 20th meeting, when we narrowed it down from 23 to 6, we kind of went through that process. And the 6 are generally different enough where, we have some choice. We have a choice where we might not have to make those big, huge changes. Any other maps that anybody wants to look at for changes that you might recommend?
I want to make one more comment, too. There seems to be groups of people that either you like D, E, and F or you hate it. And I think they have different reasons for liking or hating it. But one thing I wanted to see if Joe could do for us, or Joe could ask Flow Analytics to do, if that's the case, is on map D, because there's been so much discussion about Sun City losing the ability to vote in District 4 in the upcoming election. What if we swapped 4 and 5 there and called the one that's currently called 4 would be 5, and the one that's currently called 5 would be 4? And what would that look like in terms of the change in voters who would have that 6-year gap? Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know what impact that would have, because you recall the one criteria about how after we do the map adoption, the clerk's going to renumber districts.
Right.
I don't know if this is how much that would switch. So you're asking, run that analysis?
Yeah,
and figure
because
out?
the current map, District 5, is running along that whole southern edge there, so it wouldn't be illogical to still call that part District 5 and then call the other one District 4, and then those folks that are concerned about losing the ability to vote in the next election, that would not be their issue. And also considering that many of the folks that are in the northern end of District 5 have not lived there for 4 years. They've been there significantly less.
So then, explain to me, what, again, are you looking, what?
Just looking for the numbers on this chart to change.
Okay.
So not any changes themselves, just what the districts are numbered.
Just call them switch District 4 and 5 and how that would make this thing look.
Based on draft map D?
Yes.
Looking at the screen right now? So you're
Yes.
saying switch 4, pink District 4?
It would be 5, and the orange one would be 4.
Okay. I go back and watch these, so that's okay. I can figure it out. It may look like I'm taking no notes. I'll watch it 10 times.
Okay.
Any questions or changes on D?
Thank you.
Great idea.
That's interesting.
Talk about C. Did anybody want to talk about C at all? And again, we'll have opportunities at the next meetings to kind of do this again too. Seeing no comments from commissioners, I would seek a motion to adjourn.
I don't know if we did public comment overall on that item. I don't remember, but if anyone else has any
Like
public
last
comment.
week we didn't, or last time we didn't.
Okay.
So
Just before we adjourn, because I know we had talked about making a couple little changes, so if anybody else has public comment that they'd like to make, I would.
do we have public comment? I thought we did.
Yes,
I thought we did.
I don't know.
And nobody stepped forward, so I'll close public comment. Again, for information only, no action required. Is there a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So motion and a second, clerk? Or do we just want to do a,
Do it
all in favor, say aye?
That'll make it easier.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Anybody wants to stay? All right, motion passes. Thank you all very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. We'll see you on Thursday night.
Woo.